Hello and welcome to the Fire Chief's video message for November 2021. We are in some great time, great weather here as we're getting ready to approach the Thanksgiving holidays and the beginning of the 21 holiday season. That's not going to last long. Soon it'll be cold and wintry. And as we are getting ready for the holidays, we're going through a period of time that we traditionally have staffing challenges with workforce availability. And this month's video message will be about that. So joining me this month is Battalion Chief Kelly Mullendorf. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
I talked about on one of my prior videos your adjustment and battalion chief for staffing and in charge of all of the components with scheduling, transfers, and how that position has developed, and what a better person to have here to talk about the staffing challenges. So one of the things, and as this opening slide talks about, as this word map outlines, there's so many things that go into staffing. And in this dialogue, I'm going to touch a little bit about volunteer staffing and some comparables to the career numbers, but these numbers are almost exclusively set for the career force. But there are so many things, and as you've gotten into this position, your horizon of what's involved has, I'm sure, gotten bigger. Tell us about some of those things.
So with everything that we've done in the scheduling office is when we are looking at the daily staffing and just how complex it is, how we have the career staffing versus the volunteer staffing, and then all of the components that make up a daily schedule, whether they're specialties or leave usage and how many different types of leave they have. So that's been a real eye-opener, and I think touching on some of that to explain that will help.
So one of the things that people understand but also don't understand is why it takes 4.7 people to fill a spot 24 hours a day, seven days a week, 52 weeks out of the year. And I wanted to take this opportunity and really get into where that number comes from. Where do you know that it comes from, and what's that based upon?
So we have the available number of hours per year, and then how many hours the typical employee works. And then that is broken down into their sick leave usage, Kelly days, annual leave, military leave. And while not every single person may use any of that leave in a year, it's averaged across the board for the department.
And that's a great point. And as this slide talks about, it's really simple math. 8,760 hours in a year. We got to fill that seat for all 8,760 hours. And a shift work firefighter is working on the 24/48 schedule, 2,496 hours, but he or she is not actually working 2,496. You outlined all of those primary reasons, and it's real simple. And as we'll see on this next slide, the actual number of available to work, and what we're talking here is firefighter 3's non-paramedic, is 1,850 hours. So 8,760 divided by 1,850, and you get this number of 4.7. Now, what's the variable between firefighter medic, firefighter master medic? How much does it vary between the ranks?
So between the ranks, we have, and with any specialty, okay, it's not just the paramedics, it could be swift water, hazmat type thing. So with the specialties, we actually would need more people to fill those spots, because they still, it's still the same thing. You have the Kelly days and you have the annual leave, and we have the minimum number of staffing we have per shift.
Absolutely. And the county stat data talks about and takes 3 full years of information and averages that. And as you said, it averages it out amongst the entire lump of persons at that rank. So all firefighters, so about 700 folks, are in this number that's shown on this chart. And when you break out, to a much smaller group, when you get to ECC officers or ECC masters, that group is so small, some variabilities in there can significantly sway that. But yeah, we know that at ECC, because of the 42-hour work week or fire investigations, because the same thing, that number jumps up to a little over 5.2 to 5.6. But for the shift work station-based personnel, that number's right at 4.7 or 4.8. But looking at that chart, like you said, administrative leave, annual leave, comp, disability, multiple styles of disability, multiple styles of sick leave, military, personal leave, leave without pay, light duty, and details off the floor. One of those two we're going to talk about a little bit further later on, but that's another big factor, big influence to availability. But that's where you get 1,850 hours available to work each year. And people can go to the county stat website, look for the 2018 Fire Rescue Net Annual Work Hour Report. It's there, it's part of that. And the unique part about the Net Annual Work Hour analysis is it was last completed almost a decade prior, in 2007, prior to it being refreshed in 2018. But what does that 2018 report say as to the number of positions that fire rescue is short?
So right now, I mean, as far as the number of full-time employees that we're short, I mean, it's around 180, right? And so when you're short that many, coupled with just the change of culture, the years in between the studies that have been done, if we're really going to be short about 50% of where the 180.
And as you said, that number is the statistical correct number, is if all of the positions were staffed at the 4.7 number, the department is just shy of 180 positions from the correct number. Now, this is where the balancing is required. There is absolutely a balance of full-time positions, or FTEs, and overtime. And that's very delicate, but in the public safety fire rescue profession, there is a definite level there. Now, I have said it for a good long period of time after the county stat report came out that we did not need to fill all 180 positions. We needed to fill about 50% of that, and that's where the balance comes. But that's still 90 positions that the department needed to add to be at that right level. That takes a long time to get there. We have, since 2019, been funded for and have added 30 new positions. 10 of them were in the last budget for paramedic training slots. Prior to that, it was 20 additional positions for staffing, and all of those will help, but that's only 30 towards the 90. We're still 60 away from that right balance, and it will take a while to go, and will be a part. Now, people ask me, what does the balance mean? Where is that balance? And I go back to those that have been around for more than a minute, may remember when we had upstaff in February. Upstaff periods is a perfect example of more people came to work today than scheduling needed for the minimum staffing. That's a definite sign that less leave was being used, less details or injury statuses were occurring, and we had more people than we needed to fill our minimum seats for the day. Thus, we had extra bodies. We put them on an extra ambulance or fourth persons on certain vehicles. That's a sign of being close to that teetering and that balance point. But it's going to be another long while before we get to that. What's your look set at that from the scheduling seat?
So when we're in an upstaff position, you're like, great, we have all these people, but we have to find riding positions for them that are equal to their abilities. So it's the same when we have more than we have officers working down or, in medic positions. And we're doing that because, yes, we can reduce the overtime, but it's a huge challenge for the scheduling office to kind of find a riding position for the people. And it's not that we can just move someone and add them forth on a special service and then hire the truck driver in an overtime spot, it's a lot of moves. It could be 3 or 4 moves in order to fill it correctly and to be the most responsible with our personnel.
Yep. And then as that last chart talked about, it said leave statuses, different leave categories, and then it talked about details and mids or light duty. And that is a huge fluctuating driver and also a necessity. What is the mids and how can you categorize it for everybody to understand what that number is?
So the mids is people on light duty. It's a medical induced schedule change, basically. So it could be an injury, it could be an FMLA status, a disability, someone 85. So injuries are all included. So that number, it fluctuates, but right now we're kind of hovering around the 60, I believe. And so those are all people that are off the floor or not filling their role. So they may be on light duty and being in another position within the department, but they're not filling their seat.
Right, and as this chart, the little picture on the bottom right shows, as we prepared for this video, the daily number, and we do get a daily report, on this, the daily number right before the video was shot was 69 folks. That means as of that morning, there were 69 career personnel that were unavailable to work. Some of them were in light duty, but they may be helping at CMF, they may be helping at headquarters, they may be helping at other places, but that's not a unit being staffed with a firefighter rescuer. That does absolutely include DAL, work-related injuries that were 85 or work-related or non-work-related injuries. That number has been as high as in the 80s. It was that way several years ago, and also within a couple years ago, it was as low as in the 30s. It definitely fluctuates, and you see that wide range of almost 40 to 50 people fluctuating. When you just make a change, and then when this upper 60s gets back down to the mid 40s, that's another 7 to 8 people per shift back in the station, back on the rigs, and that's a significant factor. So Chief Carpenter, Captain Cummins, and all of you within the department have a role in this. And I know there's so many folks that strive so hard to return to duty, get fit, and overcome the sicknesses, ailments, aches, and pains that place us out. But it does take time, and there's no doubt that I want people to not rush back. I want them to take the appropriate time and heal properly, as opposed to getting potentially re-injured in the future. But this is a factor. Now, one of the things people may be thinking about this number is, does it include our current COVID people, Kelly?
It does. So right now we are about 19, I think, today. So it's really been in the mid-teens. So it does include those. And if we can get, just those people back to work, that's roughly 5 per shift.
Right.
5 more people on the floor is going to help us out in staffing.
So as we had been up in the 30s at one point, we've been staying mostly in the teens for the last several months. But absolutely, those that are off for direct exposure or direct, sickness from COVID, that is another influencer. Now, training or details off the floor is the next big category. And what do you see when you look at this pie chart and the positions there and how they support the organization's needs?
So the ALS students are going to be the biggest subset of the details off the floor.
Yep.
Right now we have 18 in training, and those are an absolute necessity. We can't take them out of training entirely. We can't just pause the class to get the people back on the floor, because it's going to have that downstream effect where when we're through attrition, we're losing medics, and we have more services coming into play at some point. We still need them, so we have to continue the training. We've got ECC residents, we've still got some ALS residents, people in training. So.
As you said, there's an operational necessity for these details. That's why they're approved as details. Yes, absolutely, we could stop paramedic training and bring those people back. And we do that from time to time. We will do that on later this month, on the holidays as an example, to work to reduce force holds. At some point, they can't be brought back because of what the rotation they're in or the function that they're at, and that makes an unavailability. But that's constantly looked at by yourself and the schedulers as well as the ALS training folks at the academy. But yeah, we've been as high as in the 30 for paramedics training. I do believe the numbers between 20 and 30 on an annual basis. That's what we're striving to get, at least 20 positions to support ALS training. We've got 10, like I said. You talked about ECC. We also have, facilities, scheduling, administrative, FEI training. But 35 people this week, right now, detailed to non-staffing things. And some of these folks are there for a long term, like Captain Weimer at facilities, Captain Poist at small tools or apparatus, Captain Graham, who's at EMS logistics right now, and others who've done other things over time, or the fire investigators training. That's like ALS. That's a full year that those lieutenants are unavailable as they're going through the police academy, then getting their field training to then be able to be minimum staffing in the office. So it is absolutely an importance. It's something that we are very critical on, and we strive to only detail as necessity indicates. And a lot of that goes into what is critical to the department.
Right, it's the critical functions that we have, and it's analyzed and scrutinized in the office, and to say, how many do we have off per shift, and try to even it out so that it's not all, we don't just have all of one shift off on these details.
So we've talked about why people are unavailable to work. Now it's probably best to talk about how many people either retire or leave from the organization a year, and then that'll naturally dovetail into how many people we hire a year and how that really plays a clear role. How many people are retiring or leaving from MCF for us on the career side, monthly or annually?
So we have about 4 per month, right? So that's roughly 48 per year. And when the drop list, we see that and we say, okay, these are guaranteed to be gone. But then we have the other separations, whether it be disability or change in their life path, whatever it is. Those are the unexpected, and we don't necessarily know. We can't prepare as well for that. But on average, 4 per month is very safe.
And we're going to see this in a chart in a minute, which will help outline it. It used to be about 3. It again has grown up to and increased to about 4. As the department has grown, it naturally goes up. And no doubt, about 85% or so of our retirements are through the drop. We can forecast that almost the complete, 36 months out. People may change their date in the drop a little bit, but that's a well anticipated activity. Disability, on that note, we're about 7 to 10 on average. About 10 folks a year are retired through the disability process. And again, most of those you can see based upon when they're applying for it, but you don't have that exact forecasting as much as we do with drop. And then there's people that do just change life. They change because of their family circumstances and they have to relocate. They change because of all kinds of other reasons. And those are just, as I describe them, parachutes. They walk in, they go to the OHR, they put in their papers, and they pull the ripcord, and poof, they're out. And if you missed the email or you didn't hear the scuttlebutt at the station, maybe weeks before you realize that so and so just left. So that's almost 48 or so folks a year depart. So one recruit class, recruit classes fluctuate 40 to 50 folks, but if we just use 50 as a broad number, a recruit class per year just to maintain staffing at a status quo. And that's a critical issue when we have a lot of service enhancements that we're striving to do and that we have done. So that plays a big role into your world of scheduling and forecasting, right?
It does, and it's not just we need the recruit classes to come out and their minimum staffing, and then it takes time for them to progress to be engine drivers because maybe that's what we need, and we need specialties. So it's not just because the recruit class comes out, it's not instantly fixing all of the problems. It is certainly alleviating them, and then we just need people to stay really motivated to keep progressing.
Absolutely. And when we talk about recruit class timing, part of that we know is 26 weeks worth of academics for a full class, 10 to 12 weeks for a previously trained class. Almost 6 months from the time we commit to when the classes will be starting to include physical, background, CPAT, and all of the hiring processes, plus a month or two prior to that at the shortest window possible for the entrance exam and the application period. So it's really a full 12-month process from the time we put somebody in the seat at the academy going backwards to the time that we open the IRC or the job announcement for positions. So it's a full-time thing that admin services works on. And it is very specifically scheduled and planned. And one of the things that people don't capture until they discuss this, and I was discussing it the other day at a station, is we just can't add a service or add staffing until there's humans, personnel available for it. So absolutely, RC 49 is going to graduate in about 3 weeks, be the middle of December when they graduate. Then they get 2 weeks for non-staffing. The other class doesn't graduate until July. So service enhancements or changes in staffing are very much tied to when the recruits graduate. Now, people may have heard attrition chart, and one of the things you were talking about is recognizing what that means, and it's critical, but it's also quite unique as you look at this chart. How do you best describe it? And I know this is a challenging question.
So I'll say the best way to describe it is slightly confusing at first until you can figure out what all the numbers mean and how we're calculating those. Right. So, you have the calendar year, and then the fiscal year.
Yeah. So we look at this, and when you look at this chart, recognize that the line of 0 on this Excel chart is what is called our approved complement. The approved number of positions in the budget through county government. Now roll back a few minutes in the video and talk about how many positions we're short to be at the right staffing number. That means that this line is artificially low because it's not accounting for that 160 position current delta between being at the right place and where we're at. So this line is our approved complement line. This line goes up and down and with a lot of influencers, but if you look at this chart from left to right, you kind of correlate roughly a 3 to 4 position reduction every month. That ties directly to that attrition and the number of retirements that we have. And when we have that drop list, we directly calculate that. So if there's 3 this month but 5 the next month, this chart will be reflective of that as it goes. Now, what drives things from a position on the chart up? So what are the indicators that make this chart go up?
So that would be the recruit classes graduating.
Graduating, exactly. So we'll map on this chart, and I took some of the details out so the chart was less confusing. But exactly, we map on this chart when recruit classes start, and then when numbers go up on the chart, it's when the recruits graduate and become available to the field. So like I say, right here at the very end of calendar 21, and we'll point this out in a second, it jumps up because of recruit class 49's graduation. This is very telling, and the reason I'm including this here is it shows us that for basically all of physical 21 and physical 22 so far, we have been in the single digits and in the negative digits. it has been about 3 years since we were in this situation as we are in this last roughly 12 to 18 months, where we were in the single digits in the past. This is a telltale sign to me that our staffing availability is struggling and is challenged as well. Having worked on this for a long time, having been a party to kind of making this chart when we did that more than a minute ago, I like us to see this chart in the 20 to 40 over number, and for us to stay there because, as I said, we're already 160 positions short. Having this chart technically show us that 20 over complement really means that that's 140 positions. So it is absolutely that balance. When you look at this chart, the solid lines, for those watching the video, the solid lines indicate the fiscal year boundaries, so July through June. The dotted lines indicate the calendar year boundaries of January through December, and then each month is one of the bar charts. As you can see, July, August, September, we were right at the single digits, 11, 10, and 6. October, we were right below. November, we're still below, and it's not until December, when RC 49 comes out in a couple weeks, that we get up and get above that number. And then as you see, the end of 22, you notice that it goes back up. We're going to be seeing about 30 folks come out of the recruit school for 49. It stays up for a period of time, but before we finish FY22, once again, it's back to the single digits and back to the negative digits before recruit class 50 graduates. So this is a immense planning tool that we use, and it's one of the critical things where we're trying to synchronize when recruit classes start, when services can change, how many recruits we need, and this is just probably half of the equation, would you say, as to what goes into staffing?
Yeah, it's about half.
So one of the things we talked about in this at the very beginning is it takes 4.7 positions to fill a slot, 24 hours a day on the career side. It takes 9 positions to fill a seat with volunteer staffing. So I'm going to use Station 3 as a quick example. The lieutenant's positions on day work for the rescue squad and the tower as an example. They leave at 5 o'clock. 2 unit officers are needed each night and weekend. So to fill 7 nights and the Saturday and Sunday dayside slots, that's a minimum of 9 people to fill that function when you assume or plan for a volunteer to fill the slot 1 12-hour period per week. So that doesn't provide any relief for float officer style positions. So really the better planning number is 10 or maybe even 11. So there's very much a comparable staffing factor on the volunteer side as we've gone over here on the career side. So, going back to this first slide as we started this off, staffing a complicated situation, and it's one that the schedulers, Chief Kerrigan, Chief Bailey, the folks that deal with and work through operations staffing are immensely aware of, and I hope our few minutes here have maybe gotten material out to the folks to understand this. So any closing words or additional thoughts?
I think it's just really important to note that it's not just one aspect that creates this, and there is a plan. It's just, it takes time, and the downstream effects for things, just stopping things to put an immediate fix to it isn't going to necessarily the right answer.
Absolutely, and we are in the pandemic, second year of the pandemic. We're talking about that. Some of these staffing problems, again, wipe the pandemic off. Everybody comes back to work on December 1st. There's no more sickness of the pandemic, no more leave related to that. That really is about 15 people, 10 to 20 people back to work, period. There's still the MIDS list or the light duty list. People have joked about it as being the 6th Battalion. That's goes up and down, but that's not the only part of this. We're on a low period of a 3-year track for staffing availability. We're also right at the end point of getting some recruit classes trained to get some recruits out to the field. And one of the things that we purposely did for the safety of recruit class 48 was limit that recruit class for the COVID restrictions and COVID balancing. And that reduced the number of people available to graduate from that class, and that has a short-term and a long-term impact. So many different things, and I really appreciate you coming in today to help explain it with me and help people see that there's a lot that involves this.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, and again, as you keep getting immersed into the position more and more, people will see, as well as, there's so many parts to this. So again, welcome and thank you for the time today. So we're wrapping this one up for November. As outlined, there's a lot of things that go into this. I want to say to each and every one of you career members, thank you for your hard work, your extra work, and being there to help the residents of the county. It is a struggle where I classify it as a failure of mine that we have force holds, and an opportunity, because one of our main goals is to ensure that you have the opportunity to go home when your shift is over. And when we are unable to do that, it is a struggle and a challenge. And for those that do get force hold, my appreciation to you and my apology to you for that. As co-workers and members of the shift, understand that it's our objective to come to work when we're healthy, make sure we're not coming to work sick and having additional downstream problems there. But again, it is a big struggle. Holidays are gonna also be another factor. We got Thanksgiving coming up next week, and then the Christmas and December holidays right around the corner. So for those that are available, please take that extra time, sign up in Telestaff on my LFRD side of the house. If you're available to work, cover an extra standby or a duty night to assist to ensure adequate staffing, absolutely do that, and I appreciate that immensely, as our residents in the county have high expectations and high demand. So watch out. We've already had some of our first fireplace / alternate heat source fires this year. Make sure you got your cold weather bag and your additional clothing on the rig ready to go. As we wrap up November, take care, stay safe.